Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Back to the VRRC, where it's an exciting time, a brand new championship coming your way, and it's one that we are all super excited about, a championship that everyone here thinks is going to produce some ultra close racing, and it is for the Porsche Cayman, the Cayman Cup here on the VRRC, getting underway here tonight. Andy McEwen in the commentary box, making certainly a very grateful return to VRRC commentary duties, and I'm delighted to be joined, at least for this opening round, by a voice that will be very familiar to you all, Dave Marshall, alongside me in the comms box. And Dave, I know, is just as raring to go, chomping at the bit as I am to get this championship underway. Dave, a lot of work has gone into the Cayman Cup to try and make it as competitive as possible. We'll get into all of the things that have been changed in a little while, but yeah, this is going to be good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm as excited as what you are, and I'm here to try and remember how to do a bit of comms. I know Jack Oliphant can't be with us tonight, but he is filling in the rest of the championship, so back to normality after this round. But yeah, Road Atlanta, one of the best tracks, and this car combo, I think it's fair to say, Andy, we're seeing quite a few drivers of recent form slightly out of position, and it's really opened the grid up.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see if that's something unique to this circuit and whether maybe things get back to normal later on in the season. We will head next week to the Red Bull Ring in Austria, a week later to Germany and the Grand Prix circuit at the Nürburgring. It's a German double-header, actually, because on the 6th of April we head to the Hockenheim Ring before jumping over the border into virtual Belgium and the world-famous Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And then we have an Italian finale to the championship, the 20th of April at Mugello, which is a real driver's favourite circuit. That will the championship go down to the wire? Well, certainly based on all of the pre-season chatter, I would say there's a very good chance that may happen. Now, what are they all racing for? Well, we've got some pretty tasty prizes. This always seems to be the way at the VRRC. We don't do this for nothing, and the prizes here, well, for the champion, a 34-inch curved gaming display, courtesy of Agon, and that is something that will really turn your sim racing setup up a notch, take it to the next level, as indeed will the Rigs SimRace 3, the second prize for the drivers. And these are some pretty serious sim racers who may well be looking to upgrade, and hey, they might well be able to win some pretty cool equipment by the end of the season. Third prize, 2 tickets to a round of the TCR UK Championship in 2022. That's shaping up to be a fantastic season, and we look forward to welcoming 2 at least, courtesy of that third prize as well. Fourth prize, 2 hours online driver coaching, and then the Valeting bucket from PowerMaxed is the 5th prize, plus a Valeting kit from PowerMaxed for the driver of the round, which we'll decide at the end of the 2 races each week. So plenty to fight for. If you can get anywhere into that top 5 within the championship, Dave, there is something that you can win, and as always with the VRRC, they are pretty tasty prizes indeed.
Yeah, definitely, and also with the full reverse grid, there's always a chance for that sort of little bit of a wild card, not necessarily the best first race, but putting in a good solid second race and really crawling them points back. So a really nice bit, almost a safety buffer there for the format of the racing as well, so it really keeps things interesting.
Yes, it does. Well, we are at the magnificent Road Atlanta circuit here for the start of the season. There you can see the aerial view of what is one of my personal favourite circuits in the USA, actually. It's a very, very challenging circuit, surprisingly high speed. It's a real roller coaster ride. It takes an awful lot to get this place right, but the drivers have been busy practicing all week long, and we are now able to take a quick look at how it should be done.
So here we are at Road Atlanta for round 1 of the Agon by AOC Cayman Cup, powered by VRRC. 4th gear for turn 1, trying to get that front end turned in, wait for that balance, and then driving it on throttle all the way up through the bend to get as good of a run up towards the top of the S as possible. Really difficult corner, you're trying to keep the car settled. 3rd gear, some drivers may do that in 4th all the way through there. I prefer just a little short shift on the exit. Make sure we keep nicely tucked in through their messes and set ourselves nice and wide, take a little bit of a cut on the inside there and try to not run too far wide out onto this straight section here. Very, very bumpy the further you get out there. Now down towards turn 6, 3rd gear, you get that front end in towards that apex and driving it, committing to driving out onto that curb. And 2nd gear, use a bit of that engine brake to get the front end to turn in and then get the best possible drive onto this back straight. This is going to be the key place for overtakes in that slipstream and then down towards the breaking point going to this chicane. What a track this has been so far. I don't believe this has been on the VRRC calendars before, but what a treat it is, and this car just really feels good around here. So very, very good car and track combo. As I said, chicane here, down to 3rd gear, trying to keep the car as balanced as possible and gentle with that throttle input. Too much throttle there and it's just going to spit the back end out. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday night at 7:30 on VRRC's YouTube to catch all the action live.
The Road Atlanta circuit then, I said it was a roller coaster ride, it really is, isn't it? And this is a circuit you really have to commit to, you have to attack it to get a really good lap time around here. And well, we're into the 20-minute qualifying session now. We're about to find out which of the drivers is going to attack this place the hardest and the most successfully and set the fastest lap time. You can see there the times down the left-hand side of the screen. They're not particularly relevant just now because the drivers are still very much getting themselves up to speed. Eric Axelson, for example, at the moment fastest, but we will see this shuffle around, that's for sure. Plenty of familiar names up there that are entering, a couple of new names at least to me. But Dave, excitingly, there is a new column on that timing tower now, and this is all to do with a really interesting system brought in for this championship. It's debuting here tonight, the handicap system, and that, I think, could be a real game changer.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, the easiest way to try and explain this is think of it a little bit like golf. The whole idea is the handicap's in place to try and level the playing field and make the times as close as possible. This is not fixed for the whole championship. This can change per round based on driver performance. So this basically looks at previous drivers' results in previous championships and their driving performance, and then gives them a handicap anywhere between 0 and 5. So that refers every number is worth 10 kilogram. So obviously drivers that's on 0 have no ballast on board. Drivers up to 5 have 50 kilogram and everything in between. So you can see Nicky Taylor currently handicap level 2. That's 20 kilogram on the car, still pulled by nearly 2/10 right now over Chris Shepherd, who is on 0 kilograms. So it's going to be a really interesting thing and seeing how it pans out over the championship. But all I can imagine is this championship will get tighter and tighter as the championship goes on. There's not really a term we use, sandbag, which is almost where you try and play the system to try and give yourself an advantage towards the end. That system, with the way it works, if you try and play that system, you'll drop too many championship points to actually be competitive towards the end. So you can't sandbag this handicap system, which is brilliant.
Yeah, most definitely. And in these cars, the Porsche Cayman GT4, any extra weight that gets added into them is really going to be felt performance-wise, and it will be felt more at some circuits than others. So that's another interesting dynamic element to this handicap system. And as you can see, that is handily laid out for you on the timing tower. The higher the number, essentially, the more success or more handicap ballast they are carrying. Right, starting to get some lap times in now then, and you can see it's a 125.873, the fastest lap time so far, set by Ethan Hill, who ironically is not scoring points for his team here tonight, but if you have the top 3 drivers in the session, he, Nicky Taylor and Kyle Felvers, are all teammates. But again, a slight tweak to the rules for this championship means that if you have more than 2 drivers in the team, you have to pre-allocate which 2 of those 3 drivers are going to score points for your team in any given night of racing. So ironically, Ethan Hill, who is the quicker of those 3 right now, is not actually allocated to score points. It's Nicky Taylor and Kyle Felvers who are. Dave, we were pondering, weren't we, before we went live tonight, whether those 3 would work together around not just this track, but the other circuits on the calendar, particularly in qualifying. How much can you work with teammates, talking specifically about slipstreaming around a circuit like this in a car like this?
I mean, it all depends on strategy. If a team's managed to work it out and they know where they're going to be on track, there is a lot of time in it. But you know what it's like, sometimes drivers can find it really difficult to follow that closely and they get distracted by the car in front. So I imagine teams like this, they'll be using the back straight in the slipstream there to get the slipstream. But it's important that that lead driver then pulls over with plenty time before the last chicane to then give up. But then he has to then get back onto the back of that car in front to then make use of his next lap. So it's quite a complex system, and you've seen it in British touring cars, Andy. It takes quite a lot of sort of racecraft and know-how to get that system to work efficiently, but if you can do it, there's probably 3 or 4 tenths on the table just in slipstream.
Yeah, I am personally rubbish at doing it. I'd much rather just go out there and go it alone, because I find it gets very complicated very quickly. But you're right, if you can do it, it can be worth quite a bit of time. Kyle Felvers now quickest, by the way. Nicky Taylor second, with Ethan Hill down to third. On board with Jack Smith. Now, Jack Smith, one of the heaviest cars out there. You can see that he is one of just 2 level 5 handicapped drivers. Jordan Brennan a couple of spots up the road in 6th, the other one. And Jack Smith is clearly starting to feel that strain. In fact, the top three at the moment are all level 2 or lower, so they are some of the lighter cars on the grid. So it seems that around this circuit in particular, carrying that weight is tricky. Out of corners like that one, for example, 10A and 10B, the chicane, you're really going to feel that weight as you climb uphill. Now you drop down through the final turn at turn 12. All very wide, but Jack Smith does improve there. He had briefly dropped down into ninth spot, but he gets back ahead of Nathan Blank into the top 8. But he's 7/10 off pole position, and this is exactly the point, isn't it, Dave? When was the last time the likes of Jordan Brennan and Jack Smith were over half a second off pole position?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna maybe call them out here slightly. So the likes of Kyle, Nicky, and Ethan with the slightly lighter cars, I just think they managed to get the potential a little bit quicker out the car. But the likes of Brennan, the likes of Smith, they are more than capable of getting in them 25s. It just maybe is you've got to get the car in a slightly better window to get it there. So that for me is where we're gonna see maybe in the last 5 minutes a bit of a change around in these drivers and maybe closing that gap.
Yes, and of course that weight doesn't just affect your raw speed, but it will affect lots of things. Over a 20-minute race, the heavier cars are going to work their tyres harder, work their brakes harder. They're going to find it harder maybe to overtake, particularly into the braking zone. So we've not made it easy for some of the quickest drivers here on the VRRC, but that is kind of the point, really. Give them a bit of a challenge, stop them winning everything quite so easily. And hey, they're not a million miles off the pace. Jordan Brennan here we're seeing is still 6th. That would be the outside of row number 3. And Jordan Brennan, we saw in the recent Touring Car Trophy here on the VRRC, he is a very good racer. He's a very good qualifier as well normally, but even if he has to start deep in the field, he's one of the best at getting through that field, getting through it cleanly as well without running into any major problems. Right, new name to me here, although I realise I'm relatively new here on these VRRC broadcasts, but this is Dalton Ayres, 14th fastest at the moment is he, and Elliot Dalton Ayres, the DA Racing driver. He's not only new to me, Dave, but actually new to the VRRC as well. I think this is his first race, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so, and to be fair, inside that top 15, so a very impressive performance here at the moment. And actually looking at it, I don't want to curse him, clobbering the curve a little bit there, but looks relatively stable and in control of that car, which is honestly, this car isn't an easy thing to get a hold of.
No, I can imagine not, and you wouldn't have thought it would ride the curbs quite that well, but he certainly was able to keep the speed up there as he went down the hill through turns 3 and 4, and didn't seem to have too big a moment either. He's 1.9 seconds off pole, but he's, as you said, inside the top 15. He's got about 0.6 of a second to find to challenge Joel Lasker ahead of him, so there is a bit of a jump there, isn't there, between Lasker in 13th and the rest of them behind. But even in that group behind, there are some quick drivers, people like Andy Carroll, for example, way down in 18th place, so not exactly what we expect to see. There is Andy Carroll making his way over the hill down into the quick right-hander at the bottom of it. And what is Andy Carroll going to be able to do then? The GMC Racing driver comes across the line, improves his time, but stays in 16th place. Through the first corner he will head with 4 minutes left on the clock, and still Kyle Felvers at the top of the times. Very close between those top 3, isn't it, Dave?
It is indeed, and you know what? I've got to hand it to Kenny, who's made the majority of these liveries on these cars. The cars look absolutely stunning tonight as well. Lots of variation, lots of bright colour schemes, and we haven't seen Paul Zanetecchi's car, but I guarantee, Andy, when you see it, you'll know which one it is.
He does like a brightly coloured livery, doesn't he? And Zanetecchi is only level 1, actually, which surprises me a little bit. We saw how quick he was in the front-wheel drive TCR car last time out, and Zanetecchi, there he is. Oh yeah, you're right, you won't lose that one in the pack, will you? I particularly like those pinky purple highlights on either side of the roof of the car. That's a good look. That 11th fastest for Paul then, and just a fraction outside of the top 10. He's got a nice slipstream though from some cars ahead. As I say that though, the first of those cars pulls out of his way, and Zanetecchi will streak through, dropping down into the chicane. Speaking of liveries, by the way, you'll notice that all of the cars are sporting yellow and blue wing mirrors, yellow and blue rear wings. They are of course the colours of the Ukrainian flag, and we're all, I'm sure, aware of the awful situation happening over in Ukraine, and we at the VRRC are standing in support with all of those suffering as a result of the conflict over there, and this is just our little way of showing that support. So a great touch, great to see all of the teams and drivers getting behind that, and yes, let's hope for a swift and peaceful resolution to what's going on over there.
Yeah, definitely. Kyle Felvis, on the other hand, setting the timing sheet absolutely alight at 25.499. About the fastest time I believe we've seen on the timing sheet, even in practice. So that is a very, very good time indeed. I'll be interested to know, try to have a look here on the live timing screen that we have, whether he was in and around his teammates there and whether he used a bit of that slipstream. But as far as I can see, I think that time was done absolute outright as well, Andy. So very impressive indeed.
Wow, yes, impressive is the word. He mentioned only a lap or so ago that he was barely in front of Nicky Taylor at the top of the times, and now there is a big gulf between the top two cars. This is a slightly tricky car, I think, to wrap your head around. It's obviously rear-wheel drive, but the Cayman is lightweight. The balance of the car through particularly high-speed corners is something I've struggled with in the past, and I'm sure we'll see some drivers that get faster and faster as the season goes on, perhaps even as the night goes on, although drivers have had plenty of time to practice lapping this Road Atlanta circuit. The practice server has been up for quite some time, and Nathan Blank is actually a driver who's really made the most of that. He's done something like over 1,500 laps of the Road Atlanta circuit in anticipation, in preparation of this opening round. Equates to something like 1 day and 6 hours worth of running. So if anyone knows this place, Dave, it'll be Nathan.
Yeah, I think by 1,500 laps, you know, every single bump in the track, I believe. But I tell you what, it just shows practice does pay off. Obviously, Nathan, a previous runner in Touring Car Trophy that we had, and let's face it, he is equivalent to being right at the top of silver, which is an improvement on where he was. So Nathan putting the work in and the results shown for it as well.
It's definitely night fastest for him. Nicky Taylor improves, meanwhile, goes or stays second place, but gets to almost within 2/10 of the pole position time set by Kyle Felvis. Kyle is in the pit lane now, so he's not feeling the need to improve in the final minute or so of qualifying, and who can blame him, really? That is a very comfortable margin at the front. Reece Bell here at the other end of the spectrum, down in 18th place at the moment, one of several level 0 handicap drivers out there, meaning that he's carrying no handicap ballast, and we'll see whether or not that's going to help him perhaps when we get into the race. As I said, 20 minutes, tough circuit on tyres this. He might be able to be a bit more competitive over the longer run, so to speak. John Brennan coming through to see the checkered flag. The end of the qualifying session for him, then he stays in 6th place. A 26.0, I think, was a personal best lap in that session, but he just misses out on that 5th place slot then, just a few hundredths of a second away. Will he hang on to 6th though? Well, Luke Weston will hope not, because he's the next car behind, but no, stays where he was in 7th place then. Are we going to see any improvements here towards the end of the session? We haven't had... Oh, there we go. Nathan Blank improves. 7th place for him. Picks up a couple of positions then. He was 9th, I think, wasn't he? Joel Lask is going to be the next driver through. Comes out of the final corner. Needs 4/10 though, nearly, to get ahead of Dave Buki for 12th. He runs wide on the grass. Improves his time. How close did he get in the end? To 26.922. Well, actually, he found about 3/10 of a second on that lap, but stays in 13th.
Yeah, and you know what? Here we go again. Paul Zanatachi and Dave Buki, next to nothing on the grid separating. This is proving into another one of them rival battles that we saw during Touring Car Trophy. Two drivers inseparable on times, and always great to watch out on track.
Yeah, they had some great battles in the TCT a little while ago, and I'm sure we're going to be looking forward to a resumption of that here. Mick Sutton with a fully committed final corner, jumps up from 10th to 8th. That was a really good effort, gets ahead of Luke Weston and Jack Smith. Off has gone Kenny Press, I'm afraid, and he, I think, just scraped the wall coming down into the final corner, but it was his final lap of the session anyway. Jack Smith is still on a hot lap. He's one of the, in fact he is now the last driver still on a flying lap then, so he just scraped through before the checkered flag came out. He's going to come out of the chicane, but run out of time, unfortunately, to set another lap time. So it is going to be Kyle Felvis then, who sets the fastest lap of the qualifying session. He will lead the field to green ahead of the first 20-minute race of the season.
Yeah, fantastic effort by Kyle there, and we're going to have a quick word with him straight after this quick ad break.
Welcome back everyone to the VRRC Cayman Cup here from the magnificent Road Atlanta circuit in the USA. We've just completed our qualifying session, a very competitive one it was indeed, and the first 20-minute race is just a couple of moments away. Before the cars head out onto the circuit though, let's have a chat, shall we, with our pole sitter, the first one of the year, and it's Kyle Felvis that manages to grab pole by, in the end, 0.2 of a second. Kyle, for much of that session, you and your teammates were pretty much inseparable. What was it that allowed you to find that extra couple of tenths to make pole position yours?
Throughout practice this evening, I've been looking at the fours and I've been trying to get there the whole time, and I was struggling for the last chicane, and just on that lap I managed to get that last chicane right.
It's tricky, isn't it, that, because you're carrying so much speed down there. It's a downhill braking zone as well, and I guess if you've got a slipstream from someone, for example your teammates, that makes it even harder to get it stopped into those kind of corners.
Yeah, I mean, that lap that I did was without my teammates. We all decided that it was best to just run on our own. We all felt that we had the pace to just run on our own rather than struggle to get the toe from each other, so...
Okay, so no teamwork as such in qualifying, but of course they're all starting around you on the grid, so how much teamwork might we see in the race, particularly if there's a bit of a battle into the first corner?
There's going to be a lot of teamwork, we've had lots of discussions, and I don't think you'll see us battling into turn one.
Excellent. Okay, I'll hold you to that. Then we'll see what happens when the race gets underway. Final question, 20-minute race as well. It's a pretty physically demanding circuit, this, so how important is it to pace yourself here at the start? I know the temptation is to go hell for leather and pull away, but you've got to think about those tyres.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, me, Nikki and Ethan, we've done quite a few race runs, so we're prepared for tyre wear. We've done a bunch of different things, and it's just, don't push yourself to the limit, just nice and easy.
Excellent stuff. Well, Kyle, we'll let you finish off your final preparations. Congratulations on pole position, and best of luck for race one.
Thank you very much.
Kyle Felvis then on the pole position for our first round of the Cayman Cup, and interesting stuff there. I always love speaking to the drivers ahead of the race, trying to figure out what their plan is, and it's great that he's got those teammates behind him on the grid, Dave, but I love his confidence that they're all going to work really well together, but we've seen it time and again, haven't we? The red lights come on, the blood pressure goes up, and maybe if the car in second or third gets a better start, suddenly it's race on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my favourite quote from that was just nice and easy. I mean, if it was as simple as that, I mean, brilliant. Yeah, a bit of an awkward scenario here because there's three of them going down to turn one. Obviously, three doesn't go into one. And there's always going to be a driver here that, for me, is slightly more vulnerable than the other two here. Eric Axelsen will probably know that, and for sure, he's got the likes of Brennan and Chris Shepherd right up behind him, and they're going to be as eager to use that racecraft and that raw pace at the start of the races that they've got to get through the pattern, punch through it. So I think, if I'm honest, I think Ethan Hill here has probably got the most difficult job out of them three.
Yes, he was also only a couple of hundredths quicker than Axelsen in qualifying, so in theory, Eric's got very similar pace to the third of those HFT racing cars. And remember, Ethan isn't scoring points for his team either, so might he just become a bit of a rear gunner here for the top two, try and help them get away. Lots of questions. Hopefully we'll deliver some answers to you over the next 20 minutes because round number one of the Cayman Cup is about to get underway here at Road Atlanta. Kyle Felvis on pole, Nicky Taylor alongside. Lights go out, pretty even start from the whole grid actually, a bit of shuffling towards the bottom third of the field, but at the head of the field it's going to be Felvis, I reckon, that holds on to the advantage into the first corner. Yes, it is Nicky Taylor, and here comes Axelsen up the inside. You're absolutely spot on, Dave Marshall. Axelsen on the attack immediately, trying to break the ranks of the HFT guys. He's level for third. There's a bit of carnage further back, and that's Jack Smith. Jack Smith delayed significantly with some turn one contact. Taylor holds the lead though. Taylor takes the lead from Felvis in second, Hill third, and Axelsen stays down in fourth. Well, there you go. That team plan, Dave, perhaps already not quite going to plan.
Yeah, that looked very, very close for me, and actually probably all three of them slightly overdriving it for what they actually need to. I believe that's Reese Bell, Paul Laramie with the spin there out of that left-hander, a very difficult corner, and if you end up offline, can create a lot of that sort of that bouncing sensation with the car, like we're seeing actually at the moment in F1, ironically, but just without that aero. Meanwhile, on the grid, Axelsen, probably for me, one of the best starts he could have possibly had there. Not really losing any time, gaining the position early, but the position's being given back to Ethan Hill. But crucially, he's not losing too much time at all on them. There is a change of position up in front as well, but a change back to position again, going into the chicane. So Nicky Taylor and Kyle Felvers maybe battling a little bit harder than I was expecting to see them do here.
I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but I really didn't think they were going to just follow the leader for the entire 20 minutes, side by side over the hill. Jack Smith trying to recover here, the lost ground from the first lap, and oh, look at that. Round the outside, he's off the road, he's on the grass, and there's no room back on the track there. They're going to be 3 wide if they're not careful into the first corner. Who's that steaming up the inside? There's contact. Smith finds himself again on the wrong bit of real estate and ends up falling right to the back of the pack for the second time in as many laps. It was the 49 car coming up the inside, I believe. That was Reece Bell, who made at least 2 positions going into the first corner. But for poor old Jack Smith here, Dave, it is all going about as wrong as it could.
Yeah, so I think this is maybe a little bit of the ballast playing a part here. Obviously, Jack Smith's car's reliant a little bit more on the outright speed he can carry through the corners and use that momentum and driving skill to find the absolute limit of the car. The problem is, if he's hindered by the run that he gets, that's obviously going to create a big problem because he loses momentum, then he doesn't have quite the performance of the driver he's trying to get past. Needless to say, I know these drivers have got 50 kilogram on board, but honestly, it isn't worth that much on lap time. You're talking 2 to 3 tenths and about 1 or 2 mile an hour on a straight, so it's not a huge disadvantage, should I say, but in traffic scenarios, when you're trying to battle for position, that's when it can play a part.
That is Mick Sutton off the road down at the chicane there at 10A and 10B. He'll lose a place to Dave Buki at least as he climbs up over the hill, but that was pretty lively stuff. I noticed Eric Axelson, I think, getting Jordan Brennan giving a bit of a bump draft to the 39 car ahead of him. Joel Lask is off from 10th position through the first corner. In fact, I think he was 9th at the time. So Zanatachi goes through. A whole host of drivers will go through actually, and Joel Lask, interested to know how he ended up in the gravel at turn 1. Andy Carroll drops him down into 14th place now, and now Lask is sideways on dirty tyres. He's in the wall, and a great example there, Dave, of how, having been off the road once, you've got to be careful for the next few corners. He was out of sorts, he was low on grip, and in the end the situation got even worse.
This car, as soon as you get a bit of that gravel, a bit of that grass and dirt on your tyres, the car for at least the next 2 corners is incredibly slippy. So you need to have that control just to dial it back, pull back a little bit of that pace that you have got. Otherwise, you end up exactly where Joel did, normally spitting the back end into the wall, and there's not really anything you can do for that counter steer there. Meanwhile, down the grid, I must point out, for me, Dave Buki here, getting himself up. We saw him in the gravel trap at turn 1. He's found his way back up to 11th place. So Buki on a really good drive here. Scott Bugner slightly out of position of where we know he can be. Jack Smith there, obviously we know where his potential is, but he's battling it. He's getting through the pack. But Andy Carroll is putting up a good defence.
Yeah, he is. Smith gets past Bugner, but he's going to struggle maybe to get past Andy Carroll quite so easily. Back to Chris Shepherd in 6th position right now, ahead of him Jordan Brennan. Now Jordan Brennan is carrying exactly the same amount of weight as Jack Smith and only out-qualified Jack by a couple of positions, but that made all the difference because Jordan was sort of ahead of all of the kerfuffle through the first few corners, and unfortunately Jack Smith was right in the middle of it, so advantage Brennan as far as arguably the 2 quickest drivers in the series go. And Brennan is doing exactly what he needs to right now. He's keeping on the tail of the leading group, but how hard is he having to work that car to do so? That's the big question. He's carrying so much more weight than those up the road from him. Is he going to be able to keep that pace going for the whole race? Andy Carroll in the end does make Jack Smith's life a little bit easier by running wide at the bottom of the hill there through turn number 5. So Smith goes through, off goes Simon Thorpe as well in what looks like, a multi-car shunt actually. Joel Lask, I think, and maybe Paul Laramie involved. 3 cars all rejoining. Oh, it's all going on here, Dave, in the early stages.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was just off our camera angle there, but I believe that was about Simon Thorpe's car caught spinning over the top of the crest, so we can only presume what really happened there. We don't really know, but 3 cars came up, unfortunately, to a big collision. Meanwhile, up front, Nicky Taylor has done the fastest lap of the race at 25.8. So Nicky Taylor on a bit of a push here, and maybe shown he's got a little bit more race race pace over Kyle Felvers, who obviously out-qualified Nicky in qualifying. Saying that, a little bit what you were talking about before, Andy, is how much of them tyres is Nicky Taylor taking out of his car, and is Kyle Felvers playing a bit of a waiting game here and going to use a little bit of that slipstream and rely a little bit on that tyre life at the end to grab that win?
Yeah, because it's so easy when you're in a practice session for hour after hour and you're doing full race runs. It's easy there to, you know, pick a lap time, stick to the lap time, because you know that you and your teammates are all on the same agenda. But now we're racing, and Nicky Taylor, he's got the lead. He's obviously pushed hard to get the lead at the start. He's done well to get it. But now he's got his mirrors, well, not quite full, but certainly he can see his teammate Carl Felvers in the mirrors, and it just becomes that much harder to pace yourself. You just want to push that bit harder, build the gap up. It's so tempting and so hard to avoid doing that. Andy Carroll's rather battered Cayman here, back on the tail of Bell in front of him, the number 49 car, and that is Reece Bell, the first time that he has entered a VRRC championship as well, and Reece doing a good job at the moment in 15th place, with Bugner just up the road in 14th position. Leaders back across the line, and the gap back out by another 10th that time.
Yeah, so Nicky Taylor yet again just edging a little bit more performance out of that car than Kyle. I can't help but think though, Kyle is controlling this a little bit. I might be wrong by saying this, but Kyle, you know, for all he's a young driver, he's very mature in the way he thinks, and his racecraft shows that as well. So 0.8 left with 12 minutes to go. I think he's probably playing a bit of a waiting game here. He's going to drive it smart, I think.
Jordan Brennan's last lap was a bit quicker than Eric Axelson's. I think that gap's sort of coming down a little bit, and that's interesting because Axelson is 20 kilos lighter than Jordan Brennan, but Brennan showing his experience. You know, we haven't just picked drivers at random to give this ballast to. It's the good drivers, the best drivers that have the most weight. So in theory, they're the best equipped to deal with that. Jordan Brennan perhaps showing some of that experience now as he chases after a top 4 position. Back to this scrap further back, Reece Bell has dropped a position since we last saw him. Andy Carroll on his recovery drive is back ahead of him, and Carroll now going off after Scott Bugner there for 14th position, and they are already 6.7 seconds adrift of Jack Smith in 13th spot. So Jack Smith is now starting to ease away from this group of 3, but 3 pretty evenly matched drivers here, I'd say, Dave. They're all on the same weight as well, and little to choose between them right now.
Yeah, not a lot whatsoever, but I tell you what, as you said before, Reece Bell doing a brilliant job here, first VRRC championship, and really showing he got the grips and understanding the drivers that he's racing with as well. So that is as much of it as an important as it is about actually being fast, is learning the drivers around you and learning what they do so that you can either set them up for overtakes or literally just follow them to improve yourself as a driver as well. So great drive here by Reece Bell. A little point as well, Andy, regarding the handicap system. So we don't obviously just go and go, you know what, Nicky Taylor is winning this by a mile, let's go and chuck another 30 kilograms on his car. It all goes onto a massive spreadsheet. I wish I could go through it with you, but honestly, it would take years to go through. It is a massive spreadsheet where all the data is correlated from the championships, inputted into it, and then basically the computer through calculations basically works out what driver ranking that driver should be on. A little bit like iRacing, where it gives you a rank, and then that's what determines the handicap.
I'd love to know the data that Andy Carroll used to come up with that racing line through the first few corners. That was not the fastest way through Sector 1, ran very wide out of Turn 1, cut Turn 2 altogether, and then realised he had no grip when he got back on the road and had another half spin. So Carroll a bit up and down in this race, isn't he? But yeah, you're right. That sort of driver database that you have at the VRRC is a testament really to the way that VRRC series, look, it's always different cars, different tracks, different formats, but it's almost always the same sort of core group of drivers that stick with the VRRC and race with them time after time after time, season after season. And so it means you've got so much data on most of the drivers, and that's what allows you to really come up with these really complicated, complex, but very accurate calculations as to what their real pace is. We've seen it before with the gold and silver classes, and now this really fine-tunes that a lot more. And I think certainly over the coming weeks and months, as it gets fettled even more, we will have a really, really effective system on our hands, I reckon. Jordan Brennan, I said, was catching Eric Axelson. That gap starting to creep back once again. So you can see there, Dave, the top 5 or 6 pretty equidistantly spaced out right now, aren't they? So we'll get Dave back in a moment or two if we can, but for now we focus on Jordan Brennan, who is just sort of fluctuating between 8 tenths and maybe 1.1 seconds, the gap to Axelsen ahead of him. Axelsen is not really able to go after Ethan Hill at the moment. Everyone just pretty much matching each other punch for punch right now. Nicky Taylor a second up the road from his teammate Carl Felvers, who's 2 seconds up the road from Hill in third. Felvers is really going to be kicking himself for what wasn't a poor start by any stretch, but he was just on the wrong side of the road going into turn 1, and that's what allowed Nicky Taylor to sweep around into the lead. And since then, the trap position that Taylor bought himself at the start has proven to be more than enough for him to hang on to the lead. We're into the second half of the race then, 8 minutes and 10 seconds to go in this intriguing opening round of the Cayman Cup. We're focusing here on the Fast Star liveried car of Eric Axelsen, who makes his way up across the top of the hill. Eric, one of very few privately entered drivers, actually not racing as part of a team, so he is in a way a little bit freer than some of the other drivers. Doesn't have to worry about working with teammates. He's just out there to get the best that he can, but he didn't have the best run through sector 1 there. Dave, Jordan Brennan closing in now to about as close as he's ever been. He was over a second behind at this point of the lap a lap ago, and now we're coming down towards 6 tenths.
Yes, it's nice to be back, Andy. Sorry about that little drop out, but half a second, as you say, and this is where, even though Jordan Brennan's got a little bit more weight, that 20 kilogram, that slipstream is actually going to start to crawl him back into this race, and if he can get that magic sort of 4 tenths behind the car in front, we'll really see Brennan start to get on the attack then.
Well, I'm about to agree with you, and then the gap went out by a tenth over the length of that back stretch. So, of course, Axelsen's also getting a bit of a draft from Ethan Hill ahead, although Brennan is closer to Axelsen than Axelsen is to Hill in front of him, so I don't know how powerful that slipstream is proving to be today. This is pretty powerful stuff, though. Dave Buki trying to move into the top 10, but he's on the inside line. He will go through, no he won't, sorry, that was Dalton Air on the inside, Buki to the outside, and Dave Buki has to hold on for the time being in 11th place. He's on board with him now, dropping down into the final corner. He's got the 84 car in his sights. That is by far the best place, Dave, to overtake into the chicane, but Dave Buki is not averse to an adventurous overtake, is he? So he's looking even into the first corner. Oh, gives a tap of the tail to Dalton Air, who runs wide over the curb. You can't drive through him, Dave. It does have to be a clean pass, but that can be tricky to do when you've got so much more mid-corner speed than the car you're chasing.
Yeah, if I'm honest, watching that there, I just think Elliott slowed it down a little bit more than Dave was anticipating. The corner opened, Dave started to get in the throttle, and the car in front basically didn't accelerate. So I think I just caught Dave a little bit out there, and actually, to be fair, hindered obviously Buki more than it hindered Elliott. So Elliott remains in 10th place. Meanwhile, Buki loses the position to Sutton.
Yes, he does. And look who is closing in on this group. Jack Smith, weight and all, is now only 2.5 seconds behind this little trio. There is, and this will help him because that is Dave Buki getting sideways again as he went through turn 7, and the gap now shrinks to under 2 seconds then, under 1 second in fact, between Buki and Smith. Of course, Buki's momentum will be hurt all the way up the hill. Can Jack Smith use this to his advantage and get close enough for a lunge into the chicane? I don't think he's quite close enough, but that will give Jack Smith the bit between his teeth now. There are more positions up for grabs, and Dave, because of some tweaks to the point system here, even this deep in the field, it's worth getting every place you can, isn't it?
Yeah, it is indeed. So obviously a point system goes all the way through, and no matter what happens, as long as you race and you finish the race, you get 5 points. But then it's 15 onwards, starts to increase in increments of 1, and then obviously starts to open up the higher up the championship, the higher up the leaderboard, sorry, you get. So yeah, Buki, if I'm honest, at the moment, after the start he had, damage limitation here, 12th place is not too bad. Jack Smith's coming up behind. This is where you need to calculate as a driver, going, right, how much faster is the driver behind? Is he closing? Is he that much faster than me? If he is, sometimes it's actually worthwhile letting that driver through, using the slipstream so you can do them lap times a little bit easier, and then it might actually pull you onto the pack in front of you that you were originally battling with. So it's going to be a little bit down to his awareness here, Buki, of how much progress he can make.
And Also, of course, with one eye to race 2, which is the reversed grid race. The lower down you finish in this race, the further up you will start in race number 2. So you've got that to take into consideration as well. At the moment, this man will be starting pretty high up in race 2. Reece Bell running 15th at the moment, scoring the last of the points, if you like. That's not quite correct, because as Dave just said, even starting the race gives you points, but from 15th upwards, that's when the traditional sort of point system starts to kick in. But Bell isn't happy with 15th. He's got Scott Bugner in his sights, less than half a second between, and from this sort of distance you can see the slipstream really is quite powerful. Reece is closing in, Bugner weaving left and right to try and break the toe, but it's not going to work, is it? Because Bell goes to the inside line. He's got his nose ahead before they even hit the brakes. He brakes a little bit later than Bugner as well, and as long as he makes the apex, he will now be into 14th place, but he's a bit slower off the exit of the chicane. Gets it covered off though. I think that was good driving that from Bell. Textbook overtake really, down into the chicane at 10A and 10B.
Yeah, and you know what's surprising to me here, Andy? Obviously, I can see from the front of Scott's car, maybe we'll get an outside shot very shortly, the front of his car is not in a good shape at all. Look at that massive dint in that bonnet, and also the front bumper doesn't look too healthy. I believe that is what is creating really quite a lot of drag on that straight, making it slightly easier for Reece to find a way past. Meanwhile, here we go, Brennan up behind Axelsen here, down towards the chicane. This is about as close as he's ever been, and you can see that slipstream just playing a part there and allowing to close in under the brakes. And I tell you what, under the brakes indeed, that was a very, very late break indeed. Brilliant power delivery there by Brennan, and this is a great chance now. Put Axelsen under some pressure and really use this to effect.
Yeah, we're seeing here how good Brennan is with this ballast. Axelsen's carrying 20 kilos less than Brennan, but Brennan is faster at this point of the race. He's going to try and close in again through turn 1. But it's tricky to overtake through this particular sequence of corners. We've got a lapped car as well, I think, that's going to get right in the way if it's not too careful. This is not a good place to find a slower car, and it's trying its best to stay out of the way, but there's just nowhere for it to go. This is Brennan's opportunity, maybe. Carry speed down the hill through turn 5. Into the left-hander he goes, hooks the curb. They're being caught by Shepherd as well. Couldn't be any closer to Eric Axelsen. Finally, they get past the lapped car, which really couldn't have done any more to get out of the way there. And Brennan goes to the outside. Axelsen defends the inside, but now we've got 3 of them together fighting over 4th place. Brennan to the inside, into the tight right-hander at 7, and he's going to go through. Bit of contact as he goes by, but that was pretty fair and square. And now Chris Shepherd tries to follow him through as well.
It's the battle we've been waiting for, isn't it? Fantastic racing here. 3 drivers at the pinnacle of racing. Axelsen clearly has got pace in the car from qualifying, but Brennan's grit and determination there has battled his way through the position. That back marker helping him slightly. Chris Shepherd here having a cheeky look up the inside of the chicane, but quickly fought off there by Brennan. Chris Shepherd's tucked back in, and I would imagine Axelsen here is going to want to be on the charge to try and regain that position. He knows he's got the pace in the car.
Now, Shepherd is lighter than both of these two. Remember, he is on level 0, so no handicap ballast at all, and that's really paying dividends now as we go on to the final lap of the race then. A minute left on the clock, and the 5th place car is absolutely flying. So too, by the way, is the 2nd place car. Kyle Felvers, I think he's left it a bit too late, but he's now only 6/10 behind the race leader Nicky Taylor and 4 seconds ahead of his other teammate Ethan Hill. So it does sort of suggest that Felvers has looked after the tyres a little better than his teammates up the road from him. Back to the 14th place squabble now, and Scott Bugner on the tail of Joel Lask, but not able to get through. You'll notice Reece Bell is no longer in this picture, and that's because he had a rotation, we believe, on the previous lap and dropped down to 18th.
Yeah, unlucky that for sure. Meanwhile, I'm going to point out as well, look at Nathan Blank. Nathan Blank, after 1,500 laps of practice, is up into P7. A fantastic result at the moment by Nathan, and very, very well rewarded, I would say.
Yeah, no, I'll go with that. That's a really strong drive, that. We're into the final few seconds of the race slow. Nicky Taylor, well, maybe they're slowing down for a photo finish, but all of a sudden Kyle Felvers is only a car length or so behind him, and it looks as though, having missed out on pole position to his teammate at the start of the race, it's going to be Nicky Taylor who comes off the final corner to face the checkered flag and to win round number 1 of the Cayman Cup here on the VRRC. Brilliant race victory, that, and a 1-2-3 for the team as well. That is a top effort for HFT Racing. Taylor wins, Felver second, Hill third, and a classy professional drive that from Jordan Brennan to snatch 4th position. He holds off Shepherd, who finishes 5th. Eric Axelson drops to 6th. Nathan Blank in 7th place. Luke Weston comes home in 8th. Didn't see a lot in the end of Paul's Anatachi, but he will be 9th across the start-finish line. And Mick Sutton, I think, is just going to hang on to the final spot within the top 10. There he goes with Jack Smith 11th. Dalton Eyre in 12th position. Dave Buki will come home 13th after a wild ride. And then the wait for Class B, essentially the drivers that had a few issues in that race. Joel Lask, you can see the state of the front of his Cayman. That is not in showroom condition. And 14th place, the best that he can muster, with Scott Bugner rounding out the top 15. Or is it side by side with Andy Carroll around the outside at the last corner? That almost worked, but Carroll ends up just outside the points in 16th place. Well, Dave, fantastic opening race there. Lots to talk about. A really intriguing battle there, seeing the pace of different drivers as it changed throughout the course of the race. But a fantastic victory, ultimately, for Nicky Taylor.
Yeah, what a drive that was. Really interested to see what happened at the start of the race. It looked very, very nip and tuck, almost going 2 abreast round a lot of the corners, but clearly no love lost there, and a very, very good race. Realistically, by all the team there, to finish 1, 2, 3 doesn't get much better start than that, does it?
No, it certainly does not. So a fantastic start to the Cayman Cup season. Then another race coming your way later on. Well, in only about 3 or 4 minutes' time. We'll hear from our podium finishers, though, just on the other side of this quick ad break.
And what a race that was. We'll go down to the interview room now and we'll go straight to our P3 finisher, Ethan Hill. What a fantastic job. Firstly as a driver, but second of all, what a team effort that was to go 1, 2, 3 in the very first race of the Cayman Cup. I'm going to give it to you. I said you had by far the hardest job going down towards turn 1. You've got both your teammates in front of you and a very, very determined Eric Axelson that was starting next to you on the grid. I take it was a bit of a case if you just had to wait and see what was going to develop there in turn 1 and make the best of the scenario.
Yeah, definitely. I think it wasn't easy. Obviously, Eric's on the inside, so that's something to look out for. But as soon as I was in the groove and it was 1, 2, 3, we just flew away and we just kept going. Really good consistency from all 3 of us. Couldn't ask for anything better, really.
Yeah, I mean, how hard was it? Because I believe Eric actually managed to get past you going up towards the top of the hill, and then did you put the overtake on after you've dropped down the hill and then through that left-hander, I take it?
So when we went up the hill, I kept my my front right to his rear left, and I managed to sneak around the outside and just go that way, which works, I guess. So yeah, and then obviously kept third all the way through. I wasn't expecting a podium in my first proper race. I've only covered one for Nicky when he was on holiday, but yeah, not bad.
Well, it's a fantastic effort, Ethan. I'll move on to your teammates. Great drive there, and I'll hand it over to Andy for P2.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Ethan, on that 3rd place finish. 2nd place, though, in the end to Kyle Felvis. There we go. Get it right in a second. Kyle, not quite the result probably you were looking for after qualifying, but big picture stuff. It's a 12 race season and a 2nd place is not a bad start to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the best result, really. My teammate's on first. He was down the inside turn 1, so you just got to let him have it. You don't want to battle, you don't want to crash his teammates, so... and I know Nicky has excellent race pace, so I just let him go with it.
He did, indeed, and he built that gap to about a second or so in the first half of the race, but you were coming back at him there in the final 5 minutes or so. Had you just kept a bit more underneath you, do you think, for those final few laps?
Yeah, I mean, when I was behind Nicky, I wasn't pushing that much because obviously it's my teammate, so I was saving my tyres quite well, and then at the end I just thought, we'll go for fastest laps because that's the point, and yeah.
Now, it's one thing to sort of put together a team plan in the first race when you're all starting in the top 3 positions, but of course you're not starting in the top 3 positions for race 2. You're going to be right at the back of the pack, a lot of overtaking to do. You're a little bit nervous about how the start of this race will go?
Yeah, I am, to be honest. There's looking at it now, there's a lot of Porsches ahead of me. Too many for my liking.
You can put a few of those in the rearview mirror, but it is just all about survival. That run through the first sector in particular, we saw even in that first race there was a bit of carnage towards the back. Is there a game plan? Can you have a game plan for the start of a race, or do you just end up winging it?
I mean, you can go into the race with a game plan of trying to stay safe, but realistically you go into turn 1 and everyone does their own thing, so you just got to go with the flow. That's what racing's all about.
It is indeed. Well said. Well, congratulations on a very strong start to the season, and best of luck for that second race.
Thanks, Andy.
So Carl Felvis then second place, and Dave has got our race winner.
We do indeed. Nikki Taylor, what a start for the season it's been for you. I mean, you can't be any happier really with how that session went there. Basically taking the lead very, very early on and driving away.
No, honestly, it was a great race. Considering we made this team literally about a week ago, we've come up with a strategy. We've done tyre pressures, brake bars, all that ourselves. And considering our combined age is probably about 17 between the team and the 3 of us, I think the maturity we show out there in the race is brilliant. Because I went down the inside of Kyle. I was kind of, you never sort of know with your teammates into first corner, first lap if they are gonna give way. But I was very impressed with Kyle with the with how he let me through, and just we pulled away and didn't want to battle. Battling can wait until later on in the championship, but to start the season off with a win is amazing, and I hope the teamwork can continue and we can hopefully win the championship. Any 3 of us can win the championship by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very, very good calculated start. I mean, you haven't made your job easy though, Nicky. You're starting right near the back of the grid now with a lot of Porsches in front of you. There's not really many tactics. You just got to rely on that racer instinct for you to try and get through this pack.
I did it in Mazda. I went from last to first in 2 laps, so I know there's a lot more cars than this, but it's not out of the question yet. And I love these cars, so I can push through. And at the end of the day, I'm not fastest first race of the championship. I am missing around, so that is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, just try and make up as many points and as many places as we can on the first 2 rounds, and then miss the 3rd round, but see how it goes. And with a team like this behind me, I don't think there's not much else we can conquer.
Well, I tell you what, I love your confidence, Nicky. Let's see how you perform here in the reverse skid race, and yet again, huge congratulations on taking P1 in race 1.
Cool, cheers Dave.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still reeling from what he said their combined age was. That's made me feel a little bit ill, to be honest. Racing drivers really do get younger all the time, don't they? Especially when it comes to sim racing. But do you know what? The wisdom and the professionalism that those 3 showed in that race was fantastic. That will all be tested even more, though, in our second race, which is almost ready to get underway, because this is another 20-minute race. However, the full finishing order is reversed to set the grid for race 2. So we've got Simon Thorpe on the pole position. Alongside him is going to be Reece Bell, and they will be our front row, whereas Nicky Taylor will start way back in 19th on the grid. This should be a good one. Red lights go on. They go out now, we're away and racing. It's not such an even start this time because it's a slow one from the pole sitter. Bell goes up the inside into the lead, and Paul Laramie tries to take second place as well. And here comes Andy Carroll at the middle of everybody. He's going to be at least second, I think, into the first corner. He might even challenge for the lead. Goes to the outside, 3 wide. There's contact. It all ends in tears. Off goes Andy Carroll into the wall. Cars scatter left, right and centre. And there's even more carnage going up the hill. Eric Axelson's off the road. That's big for the championship, given his pace in the first lap. And surely we will have some of our front runners delayed and all of that. Well, not Nicky Taylor. He's up into 8th place. I actually think, Dave, that amazingly all of the HFT racing cars through that relatively unscathed. Unsurprisingly, the safety car is scrambled, but that was our worst fears realised.
Yeah, this is one of the problems. Rear-wheel drive cars, unfortunately, once it gets to tap or on the grass, there's very little you can do to actually try and save the back of the car. So that's exactly what we saw there. Unfortunately, a chain reaction where one after another car just basically ends up creating that sort of chain effect, really. So very, very unfortunate circumstance. But yeah, as you said, Team HFT almost actually might have getting a little bit lucky there, you know, all being that far back on the grid. Everything had sort of kicked off and dispersed by the time they arrived at the scene. That actually meant it was slightly easier for them to actually get through the pack. So, yeah, straight away you can see Nicky Taylor already on the back of Brennan, already up into top 10. So very, very good points haul here at the moment.
Yeah, more than a little bit lucky. I was about to say they should go out and buy a lottery ticket tonight, but they're probably not old enough, are they? Either way, that was remarkably good luck for all of them. They're all in the top 10, like you said. Fantastic stuff. Less fortunate there, Andy Carroll, there you can see him, 20th with another damaged Cayman. Reese Bell, Joel Last, Dave Buki, they were all delayed. I think Zanatachi was as well. Eric Axelson we saw going around, and he therefore is in 14th place, and we're going to get, I think, at least one more lap of safety car here while some of the drivers head into the pit lane to execute repairs. One of them is Scott Bugner. Now, Bugner was up towards the front of the field. Ethan Hill is in as well. That's big. So one of the HFT cars did get a little bit of damage. And those two, including, as well as, I should say, Nick Sutton, diving into the pit lane early on there for repairs. So, yeah, there was a little bit of damage for some of our front runners there. Always to be expected, I guess, Dave, when it's the second placed car that goes around.
Yeah, it is indeed, and unfortunate, but I tell you what, he might be lucky here. Depending on how big this damage is, he's managed to get in the pit. Whether he'll actually manage to get back, actually, it's Ethan Hill. Ethan Hill is in the pit, so Ethan Hill is back out already from the pit. And I tell you what, he might have played a blinder here, because if he did have damage, what he's actually managed to do is get in and back out of the pits, and he's going to be back on the back of this pack, ready for the start of the race.
I presume, and you'll have to forgive my ignorance here, but Ab, we're hearing actually that there may have been a penalty of some sort potentially for Ethan Hill, because he's come out of the pit lane very quickly, whereas Scott Bugner, well, he's actually retired from the race altogether with his damage, so it may not have been a pit stop for repairs. It could have actually been a penalty being served, a drive-through penalty maybe for a jump start. So, okay, we'll try and get to the bottom of that one if we can. Either way, provided he's allowed to serve that behind the safety car, he may well have played a blinder here, because you're right, he's right back on the tail of the field, and we should be going racing this time. What happened at the front of the field then? It was Paul Laramie who has the lead. There you can see him in the sort of rainbow liveried car with Dalton Eyre in second place. Jack Smith. Now, this is an important race for Jack Smith as the race gets back underway now. He is there in third place. He's surrounded by lighter cars, but much less experienced drivers. This is an opportunity here for Jack Smith to go for a race win. Goes to the outside into turn one, carries good speed into that first corner, but he's carried too much speed. He's on the grass, and Jack Smith just couldn't get the car turned, and straight after a restart, Dave, that is going to cost him several positions.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate. It was a committed move, and if I'm truly honest, almost one that he had to try and go for. Blinkeneck, Chris Shepherd there were trying to go for a move down through the mountain. That would have been an incredibly brave move. And I tell you what, look at Nathan Blank driving an absolute stellar race here. Remember, a P7 finish, I believe, in race 1, and he's up into P4 nearly 5. So what a result this is for him.
I had my crystal ball out, and I have concluded that this is going to end in tears. Look at the way they're all falling over each other. There's casual contact left, right and centre. That was the 48 car of Nathan Blank leaning on Chris Shepherd, who ends up on the grass, on board with Jordan Brennan, who gets a run on the lot of them. And what an up and down lap this has been. Then up into the top 6, top 5 goes Jordan Brennan now, and he's got a mega run on the cars ahead. But the road is blocked. Does he go left? Does he go right? We'll wait and see. We're on board with Eric Axelson in 10th position. Laramie somehow still hanging on to the lead. There's a car on the grass. That was Nathan Blank, I think, who got it all wrong up the inside into the chicane. Now leans on Dalton Ayres. Another car off the road to the right-hand side. Can't keep up with all of this. This is mayhem.
Yeah, this is a bit of a scenario of, you can see where this is going to end up. It's just a case of time. This cannot end pretty. All of these drivers are so determined to make progress that quickly that they're just going to end up tripping each other over. But I think, if I'm right in saying this, it's Jordan Brennan who has played the absolute blinder and has found his way up into P3. And I hope I haven't commentated Cursum there, because I believe he got a tap there from the outside, did very well to keep that out the wall, and has found himself down into P5 now. So Jordan, unfortunately, getting a bit of a tap there and a bit unlucky.
Yes, but could have been worse. He saved it, he kept it on the road, didn't hit anything, and he's still there in 5th, only lost 1 position. That position was to Chris Shepherd, who now goes to the outside of Dalton Eyre, trying to get 4th place away, heading into the double apex right-handers. Elliot Dalton Eyre runs a little bit wide, though, gets good exit speed. There's a bit of a tap from Shepherd, who was on the receiving end of contact at that corner a lap ago. Meanwhile, for the race lead, it's side by side. Nathan Blank up alongside Paul Laramie. He's got the right-hand side of the road, though, and that's not necessarily where you want to be in the braking zone at turn 10A, because we go left first at the chicane, and that could favour Laramie on the inside line. It's going to be last of the late breakers. To the outside goes Blank. He makes the corner just and gets the lead away behind. There it's all kicking off. Weston's on the grass for I think the 2nd lap in a row, and that will be Shepherd through into 3rd, Brennan into 4th, Dalton Eyre down to 5th, and they're still side by side into the final corner.
I cannot believe how that many drivers have just made it through that section of track without barely any contact. Absolutely fantastic awareness from these drivers, and if I'm honest, I thought that was an imminent crash there, so fair play to what fantastic driving this is in cars that are not easy to drive at all.
Kind of like watching someone juggling knives, this, isn't it? It's a great spectacle and you enjoy it, but you always feel like you're just a slight miscalculation away from complete disaster. Somehow they've avoided it for the time being, but that was as close as you like. Poor old Luke Weston, who cut the chicane, he was 3rd, I think, at the time, and now he's way down the order. That's Jack Smith off the road. Poor old Jack Smith. If there's been a driver ready to push someone off the road, it's always been Jack Smith, who's on the receiving end of it. He's down to 12th place now with Paul Zanatachi, not the next car behind him, because that's a lapped car, I think, of Mick Sutton, the 61 car who's next in line. So you can sort of take that brownie grey number 61 car out of the equation. Over the hill they go, down the chicane. It's a job to remember to breathe in this race. Nathan Blank the leader, Paul Laramie 2nd, and Shepherd in 3rd. Now, Shepherd could be a bit of a dark horse here. He had a really, really good car in the second half of the first race. He's going to have some pressure now, though, because Jordan Brenner goes up the inside there. Nicky Taylor's on the grass now, and Reed Jordan's pretty much exactly where he was. Here comes Kyle Felvis up the inside of maybe both of them into the final corner. He gets past Brennan, he doesn't get past Taylor, but all of this fighting is helping the cars ahead, and off in a big way further back goes Luke Weston, and that's Hill, isn't it? That's Ethan Hill, and as Weston rejoins, he gets tagged again, around he goes, but Ethan Hill in the barriers too, and that is, I'm afraid, his race pretty much done.
Yeah, that will without doubt be a definite failure. Unfortunately, I believe on rejoining as well, that was Reese Bell that got involved. The way he went off there, I think you'll admit, Andy, it looked almost like a brake failure, the speed that he went off the track. But what I probably imagine is, probably lost the back end as he came over the crest. Oh, John Brennan doing very well to rescue the back end there from a bit of snap oversteer. But what I'd imagine is that it was Luke Weston who maybe lost the back end coming over the crest and then got that snap oversteer that spat him left as he was meant to be turning to the right, and that's what made it look like he was going that fast towards the wall. Very, very unfortunate incident indeed. But I tell you what, I hope I don't curse this, but Nathan Blank is putting in a stellar race.
Well, he is, and he's 2.2 seconds up the road, but he's got some stiff opposition on the way. Shepherd has gone round the outside of Paul Laramie somewhere, we believe, so he is now into 2nd position. Laramie still 3rd, but then he's got Nicky Taylor and Kyle Felvis, the top 2 finishes from the first race, right on his tail as they wriggle their way out of the chicane, up the hill, down the hill towards the final corner. Kyle Felvis giving a bit of a tap there to Nicky Taylor, his teammate ahead. And this is where it can be tricky to work with your teammates. Taylor is getting maybe bottled up a bit here. Actually, Laramie dropped down to 6th place there. I missed how that happened. So they're no longer being bottled up behind Laramie. They can work together, chase after Shepherd in 2nd place. But if Felvis feels that he's quicker, he's going to be jumping on that radio, isn't he, to try and get into that 3rd place, and maybe he can lead the charge. Certainly once they clear Shepherd, if they clear Shepherd, they'll need to work together to catch the race leader.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, for me, it's Brennan that looks like the danger man here. I think Nicky Taylor and Kyle, you were right what you said, are almost tripping themselves over a little bit here, and it's allowing Brennan just to hang enough on to get that slipstream, and once it get on the straight, that's going to allow Brennan to just keep using that slipstream rather than them working together to drop him there. Meanwhile, up ahead, Chris Shepherd actually losing a bit of time to Nathan Blanch, so Nathan's continuing to grow that lead Meanwhile, Nicky Taylor is getting closer and closer to the back of Shepherd. In fact, I reckon this is going to even move this lap down towards the chicane. Shepherd's let him go left, which I'm quite surprised at. He hasn't really got an option with that. Nicky Taylor here is just going to quite simply outbrake him and then get the inside line in the corner. Job done, Nicky Taylor.
Yeah, excellent move, that textbook stuff. You're right about Shepherd not defending. I think Shepherd may have some damage to the left-hand side of that car. It looked a little bit wrinkled, you can just see it there. So he's been in the wars. It may well be that he's down on performance slightly as a result, and perhaps running in the slipstream of these cars is going to help him pick up lap times. If they all work together, I do think they can catch Nathan Blank, who is still only just under 2.5 seconds up the road from these three. Here comes Felvers with a big run on Shepherd out of turn 1. They lean on each other up through turn 2, and then we turn right into turn 3. Shepherd didn't give way, and unfortunately paid the price for that. There was a hip and shoulder. Off he goes. Rejoins just about behind Kyle Felvers, who then drives onto the grass himself. That was interesting, but that was some pretty robust driving there. How do you see that one, Dave? Felvers had the inside line. Did Shepherd have a right to try and stick to the outside there through the right-hander?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all going to depend on whether Kyle went in with the speed enough to leave the room for Chris Shepherd there, or whether he literally threw it into the apex, hoping he was going to make the corner, and then just basically ran Chris Shepherd out of road. So it depends. We didn't see it good enough from that angle, but to me, Chris Shepherd was more than well aware enough that Kyle had managed to get up alongside him, and let's face it, 2 by 2 down and round that section never normally works that well. Meanwhile, there we go, Chris Shepherd going right again. I'm questioning that a little bit. He could have probably managed to get a left-hand tuck there and outbrake Kyle Felvers on the brakes there. So interesting tactics here, but what this is actually doing is it's just allowing Brennan to stay on the back of them.
And it's allowing Nicky Taylor to get away. He's 1.3 seconds up the road, and I think he's about to set the fastest lap. Yeah, half a second quicker than race leader Nathan Blank. Shepherd in the back of Felvers again as they go across the start-finish line. Almost drove through the rear bumper of the number 7 car, and you're right, Jordan Brennan well and truly a part of this fight as well. 3 drivers from different teams here as well, of course, as they round the top end of the hill. Disappointingly, we're 2/3 into this race already, just under 7 minutes left on the clock then, and this is the fight for third. Kyle Felvers, the man who finished second in the earlier race. Shepherd was 5th in that first race, and Jordan Brennan 4th. So all 3 of these drivers, Dave, are on a good points haul here. How sensible is it to be risking it all for third place?
Oh, I mean, as the racing driver, it's everything still. You know, you're trying to get every single point that you can possibly get out there. I think Felvers will be looking at Nicky Taylor starting to get up the road a little bit. And, you know, it shouldn't really matter too much, but he'll be working out the points in his head, going, you know what, already that's maybe 3 or 4 points that I'm losing there on Nicky Taylor, and he can see the championship starting to open up already. Meanwhile, Brennan's looking at this going, you know what, boys, if you two are going to battle, I'm going to go up the inside, and if he pulls this off, what a move this would be by Brennan. But Kyle Felvers has managed to do it round the outside. Brennan's had to straighten up, and he will have the run, I would have thought, on Shepherd out the top, but there's not enough room to get the overtake done. So meanwhile, Brennan is looking fighty. He just can't get the move done.
What we just saw there were the laws of physics being broken by Kyle Felvers. How did he get that car stopped? He braked so much later than the cars alongside him. Granted, he had the outside line, but still, that was some pretty remarkable stuff to hang on to, or indeed reclaim third position. Right, just behind them, we've got another 3-way scrap here. This is the number 84 car of Elliot Dalton Air. 6th position, 7th Eric Axelson, recovering nicely after his lap 1 spin into the barriers, and Jack Smith in 8th position. So Jack Smith, I remind you, managed only 11th in the first race. He's really struggled with this handicap ballast a little bit more than the likes of Jordan Brennan, I would say, but he's got an opportunity here to get a couple of extra positions. He's on the tail of these two. Couldn't be any closer indeed to Axelson, heading up towards the right-handers at turn 6 and 7, and he's got a nice wide line into 7. Look at that, takes the wide line in, but then misses the apex, Dave. I think he's really struggling to get the front of that car working.
Yeah, so maybe this is a tyre pressure related thing, or maybe just, I believe it was Jack Smith who he was saying in the survey just before we went live that he just hasn't had the time to get the seat time. You've got to remember, some of these drivers have turned out a lot of laps here. Nathan Blank with 1500, the likes of Taylor Felvers, all them are pushing 600 to 700 laps, and there we go. There is the racecraft in Jack Smith, just setting that move up and getting that overspeed. Job done. What a move by Jack Smith that was. And I imagine here, he's got the speed. I would watch for a cut back here on the brakes. He's going to brake. Will he manage to get the tuck in? There, oh, he's just too close, look. But I called it. That was where he was trying to get the car set up for, and he's not going to quite have the run to get the job done.
Can't quite get it into turn 3, but I think it is a matter of when, not if, this position changes hands. With all respect to Elliot Daltonair, I think Smith, is just the quicker of these two. Surely he's not going to try it at the bottom of the hill. That's never going to work. The gaggle gets longer though by every corner. Axelson, Dave Buki, and Joel Lask have now all joined onto this group, and Jack Smith, who was the champion in the MX5 Championship in our most recent season here at the VRRC, and runner-up, I believe, in the Touring Car Trophy a few weeks ago, is now starting to show that racecraft, as you said. Dives to the inside into turn number 7, gets the car stopped. That might compromise his exit speed though, and with the slipstream he could be vulnerable again as we head down towards the chicane. Speaking of vulnerable, meanwhile, Nathan Blank has lost all of the lead that he had over Nicky Taylor in second place. There is the gap. It was 2 seconds initially. It's now about half a second, less than that indeed, as Taylor gets a good run into the final corner. Game on.
Yeah, you know what? This for me is where Nathan needs to be realistic and put a good head on himself. He needs to know the rate that Nicky's closed that gap in. Nicky has the speed in his car. He's not going to be able to hold on for another 2.5 minutes with a half a second advantage Nicky's got. But if he doesn't fight too hard for this, he can bring home a really solid second place, and I think be very proud of the result he's got. Meanwhile, I believe that was that Jordan Brennan or Buki? It might have been Buki actually, up into P8. So phenomenal drive by Dave Buki there, getting past Jack Smith, so we sort of missed what sort of developed on there. But this has brought Buki up into a possible P6 scenario. What a drive.
I think Smith, I suggested he might be vulnerable into the chicane last time around. I think he was, because he came across the line all the way down in 8th position, or in 9th position, although he's going to get 8th place back now, potentially, with a good run. That's Joel Lask off, though. Joel Lask was catching this group. He has had a spin down at turn number 5 by the looks of it, but Dave Buki falls back behind Jack Smith for the time being. Leaders less than 2/10 apart. This is where the move comes, I think, for Nicky Taylor. Defensive line taken by Nathan Blank. I didn't expect him to give this up without a fight. We're into the final 2 minutes. He may as well try and defend this. He's late on the brakes into the chicane. If he fends off Nicky Taylor, this would certainly be the drive of the round for me. But Taylor gets the exit. He gets the better run up the hill. And even in the heavier car, he's going to carry better momentum into the final turn. And Nicky Taylor gets the lead of the race with 1.5 minutes still to go. Bit slow off the final corner, but Blank can't get up the inside, and that should now be job done. He hunted down Nathan Blank. He took the first opportunity that he had to make the move, and he made it stick. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And for me there, Nathan tried to hold on to that result, but for me, that is a brilliant drive by him. The maturity to just pull it back, realise where he needs to be, bring home the point, and continue the championship the way he's going. Fantastic drive by him. Oh, and that's Elliot Dalton getting into the side of Jack Smith. And I tell you what, this is going to line Buki up. But I believe Buki got actually held up by Jack Smith there. In fact, he's managed to put up the inside, go down the mountain. What a move that was by Buki there. Just closing off Jack Smith there. Perfectly decent move that. Jack Smith running a little bit wide there, having to get on the brakes. And I tell you what, this has created up a little bit of a gap. Will this be the last lap? 33 seconds where Taylor is on track. This is going to be close for being the last lap. Can they hold on to this position?
I think we may squeeze one more lap in, and that's potentially bad news for Dave Buki, because I think that Jack Smith is well and truly fired up after what's happened to him over the last few laps. He was so close to breaking into that 6th place. In fact, he had it for a corner or two, and then it all started to go wrong. Right, 10 seconds left to go. It's going to be really close, this, isn't it? I think we're just going to get across the line with maybe a second left on the clock here. Nicky Taylor across the line now, and yes, didn't quite get the checkered flag, but that was as close as you like it. On to the 14th lap we go then, and Nicky Taylor has one more tour of the Road Atlanta circuit to complete before he gets the victory. Side by side here with Andy Carroll around the outside of Paul Laramie. That was good driving there. Into the top 10 now for Andy Carroll after his earlier dramas. Decent drive this from Laramie as well. He's not had the ultimate pace, but he's managed to avoid trouble and has only slipped down to 11th place, having led early on. Final lap of the race then, battle for 3rd place, still well and truly raging here.
Yeah, definitely. And meanwhile, we lost a bit of touch with this battle here, developing between Brennan, Shepard and Felvis. But But luckily, that battle seems to have stayed the same throughout the entire race. Brennan's still all over the back of Shepherd, and this could be a great opportunity up the inside here. That is a brilliant racing move, that by Brennan, but he loses the back end. What a save. That's going to hinder his straight line performance, but he will get in the slipstream. So what will he do here? But I think that's too far back. 0.2 of a second, the slipstream might play a part there, but unfortunately for Brennan, I think that's a little bit too far back for one of them lunges. Meanwhile, Nicky Taylor coming into the chicane. What a drive it's been. I think it's only fair to say, Andy, shown his absolute class here in this race.
Yeah, won the first race from second on the grid, won the second one from something like 19th on the grid. A perfect performance here at Road Atlanta for Nicky Taylor, who comes across the start-finish line to win round number 2 of the championship. A very, very strong performance from Nathan Blank in second. Kyle Felvers bagged some good points for third, fending off Shepherd and Jordan Brennan to the line. And then a big wait for Eric Axelson in 6th. Elliot Dalton-Air a strong 7th place. Jack Smith in 8th position. Dave Buki comes home in 9th. And it will be Andy Carroll, having got the better of Paul Laramie there on the penultimate lap, who clinches the final spot within the top 10. It's going to be then Laramie 11th, Sanatachi 12th, Joel Lask 13th, Hill 14th, and Luke Weston in 15th, who gets the last of the regular points-paying positions. I don't know where to start with summarising that one, Dave. There was so much that happened, but through it all, Nicky Taylor gets to the front, and we saw this in the Touring Car Trophy that we had here on the VRRC recently. The championship antagonist, and ultimately our champion that we had in that series, that was the driver that was able to survive these reverse grid races the best, and getting from the back of a field this competitive to the very front in just 20 minutes takes some doing. That is a very, very strong message that Nicky Taylor has sent the rest of the field in that race.
Yeah, you know what? Don't get me wrong. There is an element of chance and luck with all of this. But at the end of the day, when there's the consistency there and a driver keeps doing it, that is when you have to accept that that isn't luck, the fact the driver's getting through that grid. That is his racecraft, that is his experience, and that's what's putting him the class above the others.
Yeah, absolutely. Class above the others indeed was Nicky Taylor, and we'll hear from him momentarily. We've got to try and figure out who our driver of the day is going to be out of all of that as well. I mean, Nicky has to be a strong candidate, having won both races. I know it can seem a little obvious to give it to the double race winner, but to do that in round 1 from the very back of the grid and surviving everything that he survived in that race, I think that is sort of a fair, all fair game, really, to give him driver of the day. I think he gets my vote, Dave.
Yeah, and he gets my vote as well. What a drive for him. You can't argue with it. A strong performance in qualifying, a double win, and to do without a mark on his car, fair play. That takes talent.
Does indeed. Well, what do you reckon then? Shall we hear from our top 3 drivers? We've got them waiting for us now, and we'll start with the 3rd place driver, Kyle Felvers. Well, Kyle, 2nd in race 1, 3rd in race 2. Still not quite that race victory, but honestly, given everything that happened, particularly on the opening lap there, I think you'll take that.
Yeah, to be honest, I really don't mind not winning tonight. Nicky won both races, and I'm here for the team result. But that lap 1 was just insane.
I'm dying to know what your view of all of that was, because we saw a little bit of it when it all started to go wrong, but then the track just seemed to be completely blocked. I mean, how on earth do you go about avoiding something like that?
Yeah, I mean, all I could see was the back of Nicky's car. He pulled me through everyone. I pushed him through some people. It was just great teamwork, to be honest. We just made our way up the grid together, not losing sight of each other until I ended up battling Chris Shepherd at the end.
Yeah, let's talk about that battle, because Chris was pretty feisty, wasn't he? Got up alongside you a few times, you traded the position a couple of times. Ultimately, you got the better of him. What do you think it was that sort of separated you two in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I had the idea in my head of just trying to get Jordan Brennan onto the back of him, so then they battle and then I can pull away. But the battle between me and Chris going up to the corner, nothing could be done about that contact, really. It was just no one wanted to back out, so.
Yeah, that was up through turn 3. I mean, that's a tough place to go side by side at the best of times, isn't it? Solid start then to the season. How do you build on this now, heading to the Red Bull Ring at the next round?
Lots of team practice most nights, and then just see what happens when it comes around.
Excellent stuff. Well, we're looking forward to it. Congratulations, Carla. A really solid night here tonight.
Thank you.
Carl Felvers then racks up a pair of podium finishes. Dave, though, has got our second place finisher.
Yeah, I do indeed, and get in there, Nathan Blank. What a result, a lot of hard work, and I tell you what, it is definitely paid off there for yourself. What a result, P2. You can't really complain with that one.
Complain? What am I doing here? I've outdone myself there. I was over the moon with 6th or 7th in the first race with the guys at the front. Had a little bit of an incident into the chicane. I thought about giving the place back, but I felt like I was in front, so I carried on. Maybe that created a bit of a gap. By the sound of it, I need to thank Chris Shepherd for slowing Kyle down as well, so because he would have blown past me as well. So to be second on the grid is just ridiculous, and yes, I'm absolutely over the moon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, honestly, to see you rewarded for the amount of work that you've put in, I mean, to churn out the amount of laps you have, but it clearly has really paid off. You could tell the muscle memory, the balance of the car, you just had it underneath you, and you could actually properly battle for them positions. It was perfectly well deserved.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I feel like I've learnt a lot. Keeping it on the track is key. I didn't push for times that are my practice times in the 25s. I just tried to keep it solid and steady and within myself, and I didn't go anywhere near probably 7 or 8 tenths away, nearly a second away, but kept it on the track, and that's the key to this. Keep it on the track, keep out of trouble, and whatever your finishing position is, it'll be higher than if you end up in trouble and taking a visit to the scenery. So, and thanks to you, Dave, another great lesson, and the guys at VRRC.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Nathan. So yeah, fantastic result there, and looking forward to seeing what you can do next round out.
6th at best. Thank you.
I'll move forward. Andy, take it away with P1 and our driver of the day.
Yeah, Nicky Taylor. There was no one else really that we could give the driver of the day to. Winning from second on the grid is one thing, but Nicky, to do it from where you started that one is a truly phenomenal achievement. I would ask you how you did it, but I'd imagine most of, certainly the first half of that race is a bit of a blur.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened at the start, to be fair, because I initially thought, I'll follow Kyle because Kyle's going to be on the inside, so it'll be the better run. And then that quickly turned out to be the wrong decision, so I then tried to go over to where Ethan's side was on the outside, and then it all kind of just happened in madness. So I don't know how the hell I ended up in 9th when the safety car came out, but I'm thankful I did, and then just chipped away at it. Tried to keep track limits to a minimum this time, because I've had that at Thruxton in previous VRRC races where I've had penalties, so tried to keep that at the low. And yeah, to be fair, 2 wins. Didn't expect to have that at the start of the night. Also expected Kyle to literally run away with this first race, but yeah, pretty happy.
Does that sort of change your perspective moving forwards now then? I know you obviously are all here to win, and you always wanted to compete for the championship, but when you get off to such a strong start like this, do you start thinking points now? Does it all start becoming a bit more real?
I mean, for me personally, I need to get as many points in these first 2 rounds as possible, which I'm thankfully have done at this first round, because I am missing Nuremberg Ring, so I need, if anyone is out there, to fill in for my Nuremberg Ring round. But yeah, I need to get as many points as possible, and if I can get another 2 wins next week as well, I don't think I will, because I love Red Bull Ring, but in these cars it's just a different ball game. But yeah, I think championship points are obviously always going to be good, and wins are going to be good, but just keeping it consistent, keeping it in the top 5 every race we can will be amazing. But yeah, as you've seen, people like Kyle and that have just been held up tonight, and I think if Kyle would have got released a bit more at the start of the race, he could have probably gone on and won that by a mile. But I was just lucky where I got and where I was at the time. So yeah, just chipped away, kept my lap time about 5 tenths off. But yeah, I can't be more happy with tonight, to be fair.
Yeah, I would say so. And as we said, you are really the only choice of driver for our driver of the round. So the PowerMax Valeting kit is making its way to you now. And that is really just the cherry on top of what has been a pretty perfect night for you, Nicky.
Yeah, and finally I can celebrate one of these wins with a beer. I'm finally of age now, so that's good. But yeah, it's been a long time coming since, one win come from, I think the last one I had was in Academy. So that was about nearly a year ago. So yeah, just happy I can get back to winning ways. I know Ballast will probably screw me over in the next one, but oh well. Me getting more ballast means I've done well. So yeah, it's been a pretty good night and very good commentary as well.
Well, thank you very much. Half as good as the driving that we've seen out there tonight, I must say. Huge congratulations. Well done, Nicky. Go and celebrate, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. I'll be proud to be back, and hopefully we can have more good racing next week.
Looking forward to it. Nicky Taylor then, our double race winner here at Road Atlanta, and Dave Marshall, that just about wraps up what has been a pretty exciting night of racing. The first race was kind of what I expected, really. It was a bit cagey, it was a bit tentative. We had some good battling, don't get me wrong, but you know, that first day back at school, everyone's just a bit sort of just trying to survive and get some points on the board. Throw in that reversed grid, a narrow, high-speed, unforgiving track like Road Atlanta, and we were always guaranteed drama.
Yeah, you're right, but I tell you what a battle that's been in round one. But I tell you what, Jordan Brennan shown it for me a little bit of the potential he's got on that maximum ballast, and once other drivers start to get a little bit more ballast on board, remember, he was in them top 5 both races. Very, very good driving indeed.
Indeed it was. Well, this is only the first chapter of the Cayman Cup saga. We've got 5 more weeks of racing to go. As we heard Nicky Taylor alluding to there, we are back at the Red Bull Ring in a week's time, the 23rd of March, same time, same place, for our second event before heading to the Nürburgring, Hockenheim, Spa and Mugello to round out the 6-round championship. Please do join us in a week's time if you can for the next round of the championship. Plenty more racing coming your way on the VRRC as well, Dave, and this is something I always love about the VRRC. Whatever it is you're into sim racing wise, they've got you covered.
Yeah, definitely. So on screen there you can see a little bit of what we have to offer, but also jump on our Discord as well, see what we've got going on during that week and what our events are that's coming up as well to get involved. You can see we've got everything from rally to Forza Horizon cruises, time attack for them people who, you know, races don't work into the schedule and they just want to jump on and straight away go and jump into something competitive, and also you can see our ACC stuff as well. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of variation for a lot of different people, but I tell you what, it's all exciting stuff. Make sure you join Discord VRRC.
Yeah, that Discord link, I believe, is in the description for the YouTube stream as well, so give that a click, sign up, and I think I'm even going to try and have a go at some of these weekly events over the coming weeks, so looking forward to that. That, though, is about all we have time for here at Road Atlanta. It's been a sensational night of racing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of this championship has in store for us. My thanks to Dave Marshall for stepping in here for this opening round of the championship. Jack Oliphant will be making his return in a week's time. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me for the whole 6 weeks, but I'm very much looking forward to the rest of this championship. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the racing here tonight. We certainly did. We'll see you again next week.
Woo!